Okay, looking at the Chapter 1 study guide. Our first question, we have 10 times 10 times 10 times 10, and we're asked to write it in exponential form. So that means we would need to write it with an exponent. So we have 10 times itself 4 times, so we would have 10 to the 4th power. Now the second one, we have one that is an in exponent form, and we're asked to evaluate it. Now if it would say expand, that would mean that we would write it out 6 times 6 times 6 times 6, but this is saying to evaluate. So it means we are going to find the actual value of 6 to the 4th power. So if we look at 6 times 6, that's equal to 36. We would take that times 6. Get 216, and then we need one more time with 6. 6 times 6, or 6 times 2, 16. Okay, so we get 1,296. Number 3, we're given a fraction, 24/40ths, and we're supposed to write in lowest terms. So that means we would look for any common factors between the 24 and 40. Now if you don't see that, any larger factors, you can always start with 2 and divide it down from there. But the largest factor that is in 24 and 40 would be 8. 24 divided by 8 would be 3, and then 40 divided by 8 would be 5. So our reduced fraction would be 3/5. Number 4, we are subtracting fractions. When we add or subtract fractions, we do need that common denominator. So we have 3/5 and we have 1/10. So between the 5 and the 10, we can use 10. So we would need to rewrite the 3/5 in terms of tenths. So we need to multiply top and bottom by 2. So we can get 10 below, and we would get -6 above. So we have -6/10 minus a -1/10. The minus and the minus would become a plus. So we have -6 plus 1 would be -5. And that reduces. We have -5/10. That's going to reduce to -1/2, or -1/2. Okay, with number 5, we are multiplying fractions. We do not need a common denominator, but we can cross cancel. The only time that we can cross cancel is when we're multiplying. So we have a common factor of 3. We can divide this 3 by 3, divide the 6 by 3. Nothing in common with the 7 and the 13. So we'd have 13 times 1 up top, 2 times 7 on the bottom. So 13/14 for our answer there. Okay, number 6, we have 45 and we're dividing it by a fraction. So that means we're going to take 45 times, we're going to flip this, it would be -5/9. And we can put that 45/1. So now that we're multiplying, we can cross cancel. We have a common factor of 9 in the 45 and the 9, so 9 divided by 9 is 1. 45 divided by 9 is 5. So now we have 5 times -5, that would give us -25, and down below we would have 1, so we would just leave it as -25. We would not leave it over 1, because that is not reduced. Okay, number 7, we need to find the product. Again, we're multiplying, so if there were any common factors, we could cross those out, and in this case there are not. So we can just multiply straight across. So we have 21 times 7 would be 147. And we do have a positive times a negative, so our answer is going to be negative. And we have 8 times 2 below, so it'll be negative 147 over 16. Okay, number 8, we have 22 hours is what fraction of a day? And we need to reduce that fraction if it reduces. So we have 22 out of the total 24 hours in a day. They're both even, so that would be 11 over 12, and that's all the further that we can go. So it would be 11 over 12. Okay, number 9, we are adding and subtracting sign numbers. So we have 10 minus a negative 16, that's 10 plus 16, plus 21, plus the negative 20. So 10 plus that 16, that would be 26. 26 plus the 21, that would be 47. And then 47 plus a negative 20 would be 27. Okay, number 10, we are multiplying sign numbers. We have negative 1 times negative 3, that would become positive 3. Positive 3 times negative 4, that would give us a negative 12. So you do want to be careful on this exam with your signs. You want to watch your signs, and then you also want to reduce your fractions. Those are the most common mistakes. Okay, number 11, we have negative 8 subtracted from 1. So we want to write that out. We have negative 8 subtracted from 1. That means we're taking 1 and we're subtracting negative 8. So it's 1 minus a negative 8. That's the same as 1 plus 8. So we end up with a positive 9. Okay, here we have negative 70 divided by negative 2. So we have negative divided by a negative, so we would end up with a positive. 70 divided by 2 would be 35. Okay, number 13, we are comparing the negative of the absolute value of negative 3, and we're comparing that to negative 2. So the absolute value of negative 3, that is 3, but that negative in sign changes it back to a negative. And again, we're comparing that to negative 2. Well, negative 2 is larger than negative 3. So we would have a less than sign. Okay, number 14, we have order of operations. So we have some exponents there that we can take care of. So rewriting, we have 6 plus the negative 5 squared would be 25. Plus 2 times 4. Down below we have 2 squared, that would be 4 times 5 times 3 would be 2. Okay, so we have 6 plus 25, that's 31, plus 2 times 4 is 8, and then 4 times 2 is 8. So we have 31 plus 8, that would be 39 over 8. Again, we should always check, can we reduce that? In this case, we cannot. Okay, another order of operations. We have some brackets and some parentheses. So we can start inside here with this 5 minus 7. So we have 23 minus 9 minus the 5 minus 7. That would be a negative 2. We can go 5 minus 7 here. That'll be a negative 2 as well. And we're going to cube that. So 9 minus the negative 2. So that's 23 minus 11. That negative negative, we would actually add there, so 9 plus 2, there's our 11. And then here we have that negative 2 cubed, so that's negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2, which would give us a negative 8. So 23 minus the 11, that would give us 12. 12 plus the negative 8 would give us 4. Okay, number 16, we're going to evaluate. We have a couple of variables in there. We have some values for the variable. X is -2, Y is 4. So we're going to replace the X with -2 and the Y with 4. So we have -2, and then -5 times 4 would be -20. Oops, and we're cubing that. Carry that along. And then we have a -22, putting those two together. And then we need to cube that. So we need to, take -22 times -22. Okay, we get 484, and then we're going to take that times 22 again, or -22. Okay, so we get 10,648. Now that's a positive times a negative, so we do get a negative 10,648 for our answer. Okay, number 17. 17, we're dealing with the distributive property, so we need to multiply through by that 10 outside, just by the 4x and the 6. So we have 10 times 4x is 40x, and we have 10 times the 6, so it'll be plus 60. Now this minus out in front, again, we can think of that as a -1. -1 times 8x is -8x. -1 times -2 would be plus 2. Combining our like terms, we have 40 minus the 8, that'll be 32x. 60 plus the 2 would be 62. So 32x plus 62. Okay, so we're going to be comparing these two fractions. So to do that comparison, we need to have both written with a common denominator. So 17 and 20, they have no factors in common, so that common denominator is just going to be 17 times 20. So we have 16 over 17, take that times 20 over 20. That's going to give us 16 times 2 is 32, 320. And 17 times 2 is 34, so 340. And then we're going to take the 3/20 times 17 over 17. So 3 times 17, that'll give us 51. And then 20 times 17, 340. So now we're comparing, 320 over 340 to 51 over 340. It says here it's greater than, and that would be true, because 320 is greater than 51. So we'd answer true for that one. Okay, number 19. We're just looking at the square root of 64. To get 64, we would take 8 times 8. So the square root of 64 is equal to 8. Number 20. We're going to simplify the expression. It says, if necessary, express the result that is not a rational number as a decimal rounded to 2 decimal places. So don't let that instruction throw you off. It just means if it turns out it's not a perfect square, then you would use a decimal. But we're looking at the square root of 225, that is 15, and the square root of 4 is 2. So we have 15 plus 2, that would give us 17. Okay, so be sure if you have any questions to ask during class right before the test, and we'll see you then.